Hello, fellow world builders. Fair warning, this is definitely a part 2 to 5 minutes on world building rivers, so I would suggest that you watch. However, if you're stubborn, it won't ruin your day. If you don't know, I'm Lewis Nichols. I started world building way back before I knew what it was called. I started into D&D back in the 80s. My college buddies and I wrote our own game and published it in the 90s. Later on, I did some writing. I self-published on Amazon. That's right, world building was a thing for authors before dungeon masters were a thing at all. In the last video, we talked about the basic concepts of world building rivers. Today, we'll apply those and other lessons as we create the Kingdom of Moonhaven. The Moon River Valley has been constantly populated since before history was kept. 500 years ago, it was hunters and gatherers, mostly elves, some humans, centaur, and those rabbit-looking guys. Store people lived along the rivers, dwarves near the mountains. Even then, there was trade. It was iron from the west, lumber from the north, spices and linens from the east, and gemstones from the mountains. Farming took hold in the fertile river valleys. With excess food supplies, settlements began to grow. At first, it was farming centers. Then someone invented the general store. Soon, trade towns eclipsed those agrarian communities. The first city took hold in the Dane Delta, soon taking the name for itself. The city of Dane is now the capital of a successful human kingdom. For 6 generations, the royal family of Serenday has ruled over the peaceful land. The Kingdom of Moonhaven is entirely defined by the river. Its cities use the geography of the Moonbeam, Crystal, and Agincourt rivers for defense. Fortresses are positioned to defend the river. They protect from raids and serve as customs houses for passing traffic. Irrigated crops give the populous region food security, as well as a strong export in grain and other food products. Mills cut imported lumber and grind homegrown oats, grain, corn, and rye. Bridges and ferries control points of access, making the interior regions safer than most parts of the general region. As I have a history of getting sidetracked, let's check our world building priorities. Number 1, the river itself. Surprise! You'll want to detail out a few simple types of boats. The Moonbeam itself can handle some pretty major ships, including 40-foot barges and galleys. Getting off into the tributaries, ships will be downsized, but still very useful. You should use what works for you and the culture you build. Spend some time studying the shipping characteristics of different Earth cultures, then steal or innovate with your newfound knowledge. You will also need to know about the wildlife. What kind of fish are around? Rivers can support some pretty big specimens. Have you ever watched River Monsters? This is fantasy, and you can do even better. You can do weird stuff too. Eels, octopus, man-bear fish. River fauna doesn't just mean water breathers. You can throw in some hippos and crocs, variants adapted to your climate. Create a food chain for your river biome. Put something like giant salamanders on top. They can eat the gargantuan mushrooms that hug the shores. Really big cockroaches eat the leftovers, and long tentacled decapods eat them. There are no big fish, but huge schools of neons and blackfin. The decapods eat them too, but so do the miniature river drakes. You don't have to live up to the standards of a modern biologist. If you list at least 20 plants and animals with a note on how they interact and coexist, you have seriously exceeded expectations. I think it's worth saying again, when you come up with something that you want to focus on, drive it home. If you're running a river campaign, in every session warm-up, mention that river. You can just say that the river is up, or that some new ship is tied up at the docks. It's enough to make sure the players will never forget their character's surroundings. Maybe the ship's bells are especially crisp in the early morning air one day. Let them know that the first day of winter is when the water at the shoreline is just starting to ice over. Then, whenever you plan an adventure, random encounter, or plot point, consider how you can tie it back into the river. Next up, Civilization 6 policy cards. Yeah, it's weird, but I'm serious. So I got the idea of a regional development index from a game that I don't even play. That being Europa Universalis number 4. The idea is, various aspects of world building a civilization can be measured in developmental levels. Tied to that concept is the even vaguer idea that governments get policy slots based on their developmental level. It might not be a one-to-one thing, but it could be. These slots amount to NPCs. In Civilization, you might put the triangular trade card in. Hint, this improves your trade routes in Civ 6. And it'll do about the same thing in your world building too. If we set a goal of placing Moonhaven at development level 3, relatively weak, something like 980 Europe, we're going to get a good idea of what kind of institutions we're going to find around the lands. With these limits set, we know we have to rein in our out-of-control high fantasy tendencies. It also means that I have 3 policy cards, or NPCs, at my disposal. These are going to be the things Moonhaven focuses on as a political body, where they tend to exceed their development ratings. We know we want at least one of these guys to be trade-focused. We're here for the rivers, but we live off of trade. I mentioned earlier, it comes from every direction, and it's what makes the kingdom tick. You know what? I'm going all in. Well, 2/3 in. With 2 trade NPCs, I can produce some drama. These guys will constantly be competing for the latest, greatest trade deal. They are a pair of 20 charisma players locked into the reality theater show of the century. That still leaves me policy card NPC number 3, but I'll let you tell me what you want them to specialize in. Maybe it's a cultural thing, a recruiter of great writers, possibly someone who only cares about the happiness of the people and is always looking for a way to drive up amenities. Could it be a military man, training an army for home defense? If you're a Civ player, you already have some ideas, but really, all you need is your imagination. Now let's finish up by answering 5 quick questions from this 20-page list of insanity that I've managed to steal from across the internet. Somebody roll a few d20s, and we'll get this going. This is what we're going to be dealing with, but first I want to mention something. World building is about answering questions, but the questions you answer first is always the most important ones. If you have a list of 1,000 questions, and I'm not saying that I do, I haven't counted, there's a lot though. The point is, the first questions you answer deserve a lot of thought, because the farther you get down that list, the more everything has already been determined by previous answers. You're just adding detail and complexity. Don't be afraid to start in the middle. Don't be shy of rolling those d20s. Now, who's the oldest mortal? Let's start out by sticking with the main theme, rivers matter. I've been thinking a lot about hags lately, so let's make this a river hag, green hag out of the books. She's older than the local elves and lives in isolation under the riverbank. She's given the royals a lot of answers to ancient questions over the years, and she has earned their protection. Next topic, how do people choose their careers? And in a related note, do hereditary castes exist? Like I said, these early answers matter, so don't be afraid. We won't say it's impossible, but I'll commit to 70% of people working in the same job their parents did. There are cultural pressures not to hire outside generational workers in a given field. The various guilds have become a list of family names that rarely change. What is the name of the biggest thieves guild, and how organized are they? You know, it makes me wonder, based on our last question, if thieves are only the children of other thieves. In my current game, I don't have central thieves guilds. So I'm tempted to say the guild here... Oh, wait, we've got to get a name first. That was the first question. How about the bottom deck? Hey, bartender, I'm looking for the bottom deck. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. The bottom deck thieves guild. Nowhere to go but up. Seems like it could grow on you. Now, as I was saying, if trade is such a big deal, illegal trade is going to be a big deal too. Merchants will have nice purses to cut, but snuggling, that's probably smuggling. Getting past the customs checks, that's going to be a big deal, if only to avoid all the taxes. And yeah, let's centralize them and make them strong. Maybe the game will be about bringing them down, but maybe half the group are rogues and they're always going to be snuggling up to the smugglers. Now, what's the largest creature anyone has seen? And then we're going to go into dinosaurs. Are they around? I'm going to say we've got some CR20 giants who roam the western borders. These guys are supersized hill giants standing 40 feet tall. When they get too close to the river, they're offered some cattle, and so far, that's kept them from crossing. When one is spotted, it's even a tourist attraction, everyone coming out to watch from a safe distance. As for dinosaurs, I don't really use them as much, at least not in total. I'll pluck the ones out that I want to use for a region, and that's good enough for me. I might put some in the water. Yeah, some water reptiles. Well, I know they're not reptiles, but anyway, river, orthodontists. No, not plesiosauruses. Yeah, that's good. Maybe you get some T Rex on the shoreline. Now, I'm thinking that probably I will favor mammals on the land, so no Bronto burgers in Moonhaven. Bronto burgers. Yabba dabba doo. Well, now that I'm hungry, it's time to go. Tell me in the comments about your Riverlands campaign. How often do your characters use ships as a mode of travel? I'm glad you could all come in today. I've had a great time. You are all important to me. You all matter. I think next time we might get into some random encounter stuff. But remember, comments equal videos. Tell me what you want, and I can probably appease you. For now, I hope you all are enjoying this spring. You guys have a great rest of the day. Cheers.